It'll be fun, dude.
NAB stands for Nerds and Boobs.
No, it absolutely does not.
He's the nerd, I'm the boob.
I definitely agree with the second part. Hi, I'm your host, Steve Pierce. I'm the writer-director, and I also founded Framework Productions.
And I'm the Jeff McKinnon, comedian, writer, actor, and guy who probably says dude and chicks too much.
And in just a few minutes, my friend Milton Ladd from Saturday Night Live's visual effects department is going to be joining us on stage where we're going to do a live composite of exploding someone's head.
All right, Laddie!
No, do not
Good
call
dude.
him that.
Come on, people love pet nicknames. It makes them feel like chums.
No one likes pet nicknames, Jeff.
I bet you'd like one. What's your last name again?
Pierce?
The Pierce Man, piercing our eardrums. Don't pierce my nipple, it's sensitive.
Oh, you are the worst.
No, I am the McKinnon. I'm the Mac Daddy. Mackin' on NAB. Chicks, right?
All right, remember, we are streaming live to Facebook Live and also, this time, to YouTube. So please do send us your comments below. If we have some time at the end of the show, we'll try and get them answered for you with Milton.
Yeah, so you get to experience NAB, but hide behind the internet. Nerds.
In just a few moments, Milton's going to come onto stage and make someone's head explode in just a few minutes.
If he doesn't blow your mind, he will explode your head in post.
But before that, speaking of preparation and blowing your mind, I got to catch up with my friend Josh Bohosky, who's an award-winning colorist at a place called The Mill. If you're not familiar with The Mill, definitely check him out. But he does color for a lot of the pre-tapes for Saturday Night Live, and I got to catch up and ask him how he did it. I'm here in the Color Theater of The Mill in New York City with my buddy, baller colorist, Josh Bohosky. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. How you doing?
Doing great, dude. Doing great. So, dude, we were just talking a minute ago, and you were telling me how you got started in coloring.
So I got here off of a Craigslist posting from 8 years ago that landed me an internship at a small edit house in Soho. They introduced me to The Mill, which ended up being a great blessing in disguise.
I'm glad that you ended up with a story that's like a positive experience on Craigslist. I feel like there are probably many other people that it went the total opposite way.
It's probably, that's probably the last thing off Craigslist I responded to.
People say you have that good, clean white light, right? For like reference. Do you know what color temperature that is, or what defines that to you?
On the spot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Hey, man.
Yeah, I know.
We'll look into it, we'll figure it out, and then we'll post it right here.
Yes.
And that's bright white color temperature. You got it? Is that your? Is there any project at all that you got to work on and you were like, oh, wow, I'm now doing what I was intending to do?
I think the most exciting thing was SNL. I currently work on 2 of the digital shorts out of the 3 that they shoot. So I work with 2 of the film units.
You do 2 pieces on Saturdays?
Yeah. Basically what happens is they'll shoot it, wrap it any time between like Friday evening to sometimes Saturday morning. And I work with the DPs. So the first DP will come in around 8:30 in the morning. And we'll work from like 8:30 to noon on just setting a look on the footage because there won't be an edit yet. So it's just like selects of the shots, or there'll be like a really rough edit, and we'll just make sure that we tackle every setup. And then he'll leave, and then the other DP will come in at noon, where he'll have a bit of a more refined edit since it's a little later in the day, and we'll grade from noon to like 3 or 4. I'll wait around until we get the edit for dress rehearsal, and then usually have a very short amount of time to grade that, make sure like everything's balanced. It's the only time really where you get, like, when they spoof something, like when they did like the Drake Hotline and Bling music video, when they spoof that, it's the only time where you're taking something that's already been done and trying to recreate that exactly. So as a colorist, when you're doing, you're like trying to dissect, all right, what did this colorist do?
But you're thinking like, what do they do in the highlights? Where's the exposure generally? And where's the shadows?
Like that, or if they're probably using lookup tables that are swinging color a certain way and seeing how I can mimic that and recreate that. And it's kind of cool because you're dissecting stuff and learning from it that you normally probably wouldn't be. It's exciting. What's also exciting, it's the only thing that I work on, which I'm sure maybe like you too, that like you work on and you see it that day.
There's sometimes where I've been editing a piece or doing a visual effects shot, and minutes later it is on TV.
Yeah.
It's truly a testament to your guys' process that
we've sent clips and they've been back in 6 minutes. It's just truly incredible.
It's trained me to become a much faster colorist and like do things a lot quicker and stuff just because I'm used to that crazy schedule now.
Pixel versus quality of the sensor.
I would rather work on like an HD, like Alexa log image as opposed to like an 8K image.
Yeah.
I think it just captures it, the sensor captures it a lot more beautifully.
Do you mind if we kind of jump into the computer and we look at some of the stuff you've done and maybe we can examine like a clip or something? You can show me what you do.
Definitely.
All right, let's do it. Here we are at the big old console.
Push a little saturation in. We have like some lookup tables that we built in-house.
It's actually got images in the buttons.
Yep. This is when I use the scope, seeing what they most likely saw on set. And then here's where we ended up. So it's trying to color balance it all and make it feel a little bit more natural.
Man, I'm just to continue to just be blown away by your skills, dude.
It's good to see, huh? Josh Bohosky taking time away from being on the Night's Watch on Game of Thrones to do some award-winning color correction. We'll have part 2 with Josh coming up tomorrow at 4 p.m. But we're going to move from one SNL graphic artist to another. He's our guest today, part of the visual effects team at Saturday Night Live. Please welcome to the Adorama Live stage, Milton Ladd, everybody. Give it up for Milton Ladd.
What is up, Milton? Hey, man. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me here today. You had a show 2 nights ago, so you were pretty, when I saw you yesterday, you were a little bit fried.
Still recovering a little. Yeah.
So, Milton, tell me how you would describe yourself and what you do.
I'm a motion graphics animator, a visual effects artist, and a designer.
Okay.
I kind of got started in more of an advertising world capacity, but then found that television kind of called me to a little bit more fun, interesting work. I was working at Nickelodeon for a little while, where I got to learn a lot about the internal workings of a network television network, animation, stuff like that. I've worked with the BBCA for a little while, again, just kind of like internal to the network, but have found my way into working with really creative, interesting writers and directors and stuff on projects, freelance, here and there.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the schedule of Saturday Night Live. It's I call it the craziest schedule in television.
It's very crazy. It's compressed, obviously, because the scripts aren't even finalized until late on Tuesday generally. A lot of times production, set design, all that kind of stuff is happening, and they are shooting the pre-tape pieces, which is what my team is involved with, on Fridays generally. Sometimes if we're lucky, Friday morning, and when we're not lucky, early Saturday morning kind of thing, but that's sort of the window for production. And then we get the assets just straight from camera. We bring it straight into our system. We start working with editors. The directors are there with us the whole time, just kind of overseeing the creative process. And we have to turn something over by generally around 8 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, so speak about that. Like, what's a normal day for a VFX artist on the show?
Normal day, well, it changes every week because each script has a lot of different sort of moving parts, but generally we work from as early as we need to throughout the day on Saturday until we have dress rehearsal, in which the pre-tape pieces have to be in a completed state to be able to play with the show for an audience that's in a dress rehearsal capacity.
Yeah, so we do a live show every night at 8, and we basically, we start the morning of.
Right,
basically.
Yeah,
so
basically.
It all happens in just a short amount of time.
We sometimes have an opportunity to do a little bit of prep work ahead of time, but generally that work can be even harder to do when you don't have the footage to sort of reference. So.
Right. Do you have a particular piece that sticks out to you, or a shot you've done that really kind of resonates with you?
I'm proud of Turtle Shirt. I'm proud of the Margot Robbie piece. That was a lot of fun to work on.
And that's kind of the
librarian.
inspiration. We'll talk about that in a minute for what we're doing today.
Right.
Yeah.
I like working with the cast just because their performance is always such a, like when you have someone like Keenan, for example, playing a centaur, part of my challenge is to make it feel like there's a believability to the fusion between his torso and a horse, but it makes so much more difference when they bring their performance to the character, and you can kind of allow that to influence the way that the graphic elements get built. So when he was on set one day, he kind of was impersonating a horse and sort of turning and acting like, he had like horse legs, but then he did this sort of like trot movement with his shoulders, and we were able to marry that with some animation, and it just helped to sell the realism of the horse's, movement, and it was totally on the fly. Like, it wasn't something that we had planned at all, but just the performance element can often be very complementary to our VFX work, and it's a lot of fun to work with.
So you mentioned the turtle shirt. I think we actually have a little bit of your previs work for the turtle shirt that we can take a look at, because this is so if we can see it, make it full screen so we can see that bad boy. So this is like a pre-visual element that you made for the team on site, right?
Right.
Shooting.
So, when you're working in a fast-moving, like on a shoot, basically, there's a lot of chaos, and you have to be able to kind of like communicate exactly what's needed for post-production workflow during the production, and those people have a lot on their minds already. So this was something that I created to help as a visual aid, just as I could. It's when when I have an opportunity to be on set and to do some supervision, which is not always, but it's definitely a preferred way of working. I can actually show these boards to the DP or to the gaffer if it's about lighting, or to the props people when they have certain like effects that we're trying to achieve, and I'll say, here's where we're going to make a cut. We're going to fuse this element with this element. We need to shoot this on green screen. We need to have this piece. Like, for example, we built a torso so that some of the cast could sort of pull their arms inside of it, but then we took that element and pasted it over top of footage so that it felt more like, you don't see the person pulling their arm through. You only take this piece. So like, I don't know, it's just the kind of thing of communicating with the crew. It becomes very important to have visual aids.
So 90% of what we do is in just After Effects. Like,
yes.
we're not, that's primarily our software of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to actually do a shot here and shoot something, and then you're going to capture it and do a live composite for us and show us how we did it, right?
Yeah.
Well, while we set up for that, it's going to take just about a minute to set up. Let's take a look at some of the work that you've done.
Great.
Dude, you do some pretty incredible stuff. So we're gonna actually set up a shot here on the stage where we can actually recreate some of the things we've done. This is inspired by the Margot Robbie show that you and I did a couple years ago, and at the last minute, right before the show, about half an hour, they asked us to blow up some people's heads. So I just thought it'd be something fun to do. So you up for it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
Let's do
cool.
it.
So we also got a extra special treat here today, because joining us here is our boss, post-production supervisor Matt Youngs from SNL, who we are going to do something we all usually want to do to him on Saturdays, is blow his head up. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my bicycle pump. And Milton, why don't you describe, while we do that, why don't you describe what you want in the shot? Do a little of that visual effects supervision, right?
So a lot of times when you have a visual effect like this, it's really important to to get the camera shot the right way the first time. Obviously, you get coverage and do multiple takes, but in this particular example, we're going to do some tracking. So we're going to try to establish there's like some depth between our subject and the background, so that once we establish our tracking and we put composites and things like that, it'll feel sort of married to the footage a little more with some, we're doing it handheld. We're also going to frame some action up between Steven, who's going to pump this bicycle pump, and Matt, who is going to have his head explode. So we're going to frame the action basically between Steven and Matt. We want to make sure that the area around Matt's head is, somewhat clearer of obstructions, just because we're going to do some quick rotoscoping and stuff, and we don't want to.
Can we see the angle that he's talking about? So
Yeah.
we can, so you can see what we're doing here. So I'm going to get down so we get me in the action, right? For a 2-shot?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And then, another thing that we want to do when we're sort of setting up the shot is just try to ensure that we have adequate data surrounding the subject for pulling tracks and stuff. So that's what we're doing here too.
So here we go. You ready? Is this good for you, Milton? Everything in here look like it's going to work?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Ready, Yonks?
Let me roll on it.
Yeah,
Actually, hold on
gotta
one
roll
second.
on it.
Matt, can you hold this? Because we're going to have it linger after your head is
My
gone.
hand here, you want to roll my hand out?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right, speeding.
All right, ready? We're rolling. Here we go. First pump and second pump. Oh, man.
Great.
Cool. So what do you want us to do now?
All right, now what I'd like is we're going to actually build a neck stump when his head is gone. So I'm going to ask Matt to just kind of tip his head backward. That way we have a little bit to work with there. And that looks great. Okay. So
Do you want to do a clean plate as well? Because sometimes you don't always get them.
it's true. A lot of times we have to work with what we get. But in this case, we can shoot a quick, clean plate, which would be...
So why don't we just get you out of here, Yonks? We're gonna make you look good, and I'm gonna clear out of there as well, so you can get the background right. All right, cool.
Okay.
Let's do it.
That's
Let's
everything
cut.
we need.
Let's go ahead and cut. We're gonna pull that card out of the camera here. Cool. There
Awesome.
we go. Gonna
Okay.
take this, and here's your seat. Got you a seat right here. Now I can say we're not doing anything special as far as codec or anything. This is shot on a Canon C200, straight to an SD card in an MPEG 4 format, so it's even 8-bit. So we're not even, and it's got the LUT baked in. Usually in the process we'd have color that would be coming back to us, but for now, for ease of this, we're just gonna do this like this.
Okay. So that's
You just
interesting.
close that.
Gonna just take a look at our footage here. And obviously, sometimes it's a good idea just to kind of walk through and sort of pick moments and talk about what's going to happen before it actually happens.
We're gonna just double check and make sure that we have the computer here so
Sure.
everyone can see what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing.
Can you see that? Oh, not yet. There it is. So
All right, cool.
this is unnecessary,
We're
but
good. So looking for the moment here, right?
here we are. Okay. So
Starting right.
there's a pump. All right, so let's say we'll just start at the beginning, I guess. That'll be the end point. There's one pump. I'll just put a little marker there. 2 pumps. Okay, so after his head explodes, you react, and we'll say that's the end there. And this would probably come from an editor's cut.
Yeah, so an editor would give you a cut typically, and you'd put
Right.
it in here and start working with it.
So, the first thing we'd probably want to do is try to establish a good track for the background, because once his head is gone, we're going to want to make sure we can have this covered up adequately.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different tracking
Yeah,
software.
so just go ahead and
We feel pretty good about our After Effects tracking tool. We do use Mocha from time to time, but another thing that we should probably do is just kind of take a look at where we're going to need this. It's mainly this area after the head is gone. So I'm taking a look around, seeing what kind of things might actually be occluded by Steven, or what might go out of camera range here, out of the frame. But I think we could probably use this microphone here, and maybe some element of the background. So I'm just going to set up my first point here. I don't know how many people are familiar with tracking, but
Yes, we've used you can use Mocha and everything, but actually we found a lot of times for some of the more complex moments, the straight up 2-point tracker in After Effects is
yeah, it
more
works
than
great.
effective. So now you're tracking the point for after his head explodes.
Yep.
This is where if we had any coffee, we could just sit around, hang out, watch a little. I always frequently say, how much of your life do you think you've spent watching little blue lines move across stage?
It's true.
Screens?
Progress bars.
Yeah, little progress bars.
Tracking analysis.
So you're tracking the background right now.
Exactly.
And you're keeping an eye on it as it goes.
Exactly. Tracking like this requires a little bit of babysitting. So for example, I can tell that it's drifting slightly there, and I think it's really just because I included part of Matt's arm in the search region there, but.
And so the inner region, this is just After Effects. If you've done any tracking, you should be familiar. The inner part's looking for a specific point,
Yeah.
and the outer part's looking for the next frame. What is that specific point again in this region, right?
Exactly.
And you're typically the best thing to do is to do it off of luminosity, although you can do it off colors, right?
Exactly. You can choose, saturation to track, or you can choose luminance contrast.
Cool. So now, how's your track doing there?
It seems like it was okay, but it was drifting a little bit. I'm just going to let this continue to work.
Great.
Yeah, that's looking okay.
That looks pretty good.
Okay, and then, so we basically just got to go backwards. So another thing about tracking is you go forwards and backwards.
Yeah. Again, if you have any questions while we're sitting here, we're going to be going through this pretty quickly here with Milton, letting him do his thing. But do comment online. We're going to keep an eye on the YouTube comments for any questions you might have to answer at the end.
Okay, so now that that's done, I'm just going to create something for the data to be attached to. And in this case, it's just a null. So I'll say okay and apply that. And the next thing we want to do is get a track on Matt's collar here, essentially, because we're going to need to kind of place a neck stump once his head is gone. So I can do things like use the buttons on his shirt, for example. Again, I'm just going to go with scale, rotation, and motion.
That there, yeah, got the buttons. Machine's chugging just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's good though. And
now we'll track that.
Okay, so we got to really babysit this one because Matt's performance is so dynamic. Oh, see, we got a little right there.
I think maybe make your search area a little smaller. Even.
Yeah, I'm getting too much of that too.
There you go.
Beautiful. Okay.
Great. So now we'll do the same.
I think this is probably about all we need for the shirt. So I'm just going to create another null object, make sure that I have it targeted correctly. It'd probably be a good idea to label these as well. So I'm just going to call this one collar and the other one background.
Cool.
All right, so what we need now is some of that gorgeous clean plate that we shot. And I believe that was a little bit further along in the footage here, so I'm just gonna...
So you're gonna go take the background, then you're gonna remove his head so that you can stitch it back together.
Exactly.
Now there's a couple of things that you mentioned before and we've experienced about making plates. I'll just talk while you keep working on our background here. So, do you want to mention more about that with Photoshop versus After Effects?
Sometimes your first instinct when you have to be able to really paint and kind of futz with the image is to load it into an external editing program. So Photoshop is a go-to. But a lot of times the footage that we work with hasn't yet had a color pass applied to it. We're really just working with the raw coming from the camera, which often is like in a log color space or something like that. So it's a good idea for us to build anything that we edit in a way that can have the new color-corrected footage sort of updated inside of the effect, rather than having to go back and remake things. So one handy way to do that is just to use the original footage and then do most of that editing in After Effects, so that when you replace footage, it'll just update everything.
Yeah, we do the same thing with green screens, which is where we use a difference mat, where we do the key on unkeyed footage with just a LUT, but then use that keyed footage to create an alpha mat in a pre-comp, so that you can go back and replace the original footage and it still uses that old unkeyed footage to create the key.
So now that I have this this background plate, I just need to make sure that it is going to align correctly with the footage there. So I'll find our moment when it kind of becomes necessary, which is, let's see, just want to be sure. This is the second pump, so here is where the head's going to pop. We could even, you know, make a little marker there. And then I'll take my background and actually use a difference matte or a difference blending to kind of.
And while you do that, yeah, difference mattes are looking. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're overlaying the image on itself and shows anything shows black is the same. Anything that comes up as a color is slightly different. And so we've got some lens distortion happening here.
Yeah, there's you know, some discrepancies, but for the most part, we're really just concerned with the area that's surrounding his head. It's not like it has to cover the entire shot. So
right.
That feels like it's going to probably be reasonable. So what I'll do is I'll take that and just make sure its motion is parented to the background layer. And then I want to basically create a matte that will remove his head. So what I'll do is just make a solid layer. Red is fine.
Why do you use a matte instead of just a mask? This is something I've gotten burned on a couple of times.
Yeah, so if you start drawing masks directly on a footage layer, and if there's any reason why you might want to shift that layer, then the footage and the mask are married in a way that's very awkward. So it's actually really helpful to have any kind of matte applied to a separate layer. That way it can be parented to a null for tracking. It could also be repositioned, scaled. You can adjust feathering, all kinds of things like that that would basically be a little bit harder if it was directly on the image.
Yeah.
And it gives you freedom to adjust the image separately as well. So I will turn off the background temporarily and come in here and just kind of give us, you know, fairly rough around the edge here. Oops. There we go. All right, so that's going to be something that basically punches a hole in the footage, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, you could do it either way. You could punch a hole, or you could allow it to key over the original. But so what I'll do is position that matte here, and I'll parent its movement to the collar movement. So that essentially what happens is that element is going to follow his movement around. I'll also probably expand it slightly and feather it a little bit. Okay, and then we just take this guy, put the background below, and tell it to borrow the alpha channel, but invert it, so that we're left with this kind of
Just
thing.
the background.
Yeah. And then obviously there's going to be a moment when this occurs, so we want that to pump. This is the second pump, so maybe somewhere around there. Just have that cut on. Okay. So that's like the first part.
Now we've got the effect. We've removed his head.
Right. So now what we need is whatever remains when his head is gone, as well as any kind of extra footage that we're going to incorporate. So let's make a neck stump. So I'm just going to take another duplicate of my footage here. Try to find that moment where we asked Matt to move his head around a little. Oh, I've got a freeze frame here. Sorry. There we go.
There it is. You're parked on it.
Oh, yes. Okay. So then I'll do the same trick here. I'll just do a little freeze frame. And maybe what I'll do is actually take that layer and pre-compose it so that I can kind of build it as one flat element. I'll make sure to move the attributes.
So what you're doing here is you're building, when his head pops off, there's nothing behind it, right? So you don't see, you're seeing just nothing, or just straight blue wall.
Exactly.
But there would be bits of his shirt and bits of his neck.
Yeah, so we just want to like, oops, no shape layers, please.
And you're using, what I think is clever about this, whenever you do this, is you're using his own skin tone. You're not like manufacturing, you're not using stock footage, so the blending is much easier.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when it comes back from the color house, hopefully all the values will match and you won't have to go back and kind of doctor it too much. Because at that point in the evening, when we get color back, I mean, we are on the deadline. So revisiting any kind of like element building would be pretty hard.
You get one real chance.
Yeah.
So whenever we did this the first time, we had approximately 30 minutes
Yeah,
to
exactly.
really do this, and it was very crazy, and there were 5 heads, and we had 4 of us working on the same things, where I was building the plates, and Milton was doing neck stumps, and somebody else was doing effects
Yeah.
on top, and we had
All
to
hands on
combine
deck.
them all back.
So what I'll probably do is just tell this mask to not have any operation at the moment, but I'll apply, you know, like a curves to kind of smush down just a little, so that we have a little bit of a stump shape there, and then I can tell that effect to use mask number 2. There we go.
So now you got
just
there
kind of
you
like
go.
some kind of a little bit of a. I mean, this is certainly a little quick and dirty, but that kind of feels
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit like
fine.
it has some.
That's totally fine. I think
Okay.
it definitely sells.
So there's our stump, and really all I need now is to take that element, make sure that it has, you know, an anchor point that feels, because we might have to tip it around, tilt it. But I'll just parent that to the collar as well. I could also use my difference mat trick, or I could just kind of eyeball this here. Something like that.
And then you're just going to mask it right back on top.
Yeah.
Very
we go.
cool.
And then the other element that's missing here is the tip of the bike pump. So probably kind of quickly just take another copy of our footage here. And this time I'll just make a mask directly on the element, because I'll freeze that one as well.
You've never looked so good, Matt Yonks. This is definitely your day in the sun. So why are you compositing this back over the top?
Oh, so that, you know, when his head disappears, it really feels like it's vanished and not just there's no hole in the video. Like this will
you're
be like a
adding the
remaining
foreground
element.
back
Exactly.
onto it.
And I can just take that element and parent it to the collar probably as well and be fine. So this is going to be one that isn't visible until the head actually disappears. So I'll just trim the endpoint there. Same for the neck stump. All right. So maybe I need a little feather on this mask. Okay, so now we basically have what will be our final piece.
And you could
except-
go through and refine the
Oh,
scale and
certainly.
rotation of that if we wanted.
Yeah.
For now, I think for all intents and purposes, let's keep moving forward and show
Okay.
how you really sell the effect.
So we talked about this a little bit, and it's always different as far as making someone's head explode. Whoops. But it's a helpful thing to be able to anticipate any kind of action. A lot of times with making visual effects animation for comedy, like you want to enhance the performance as much as you can while working with the existing footage. So we thought it would be a good idea to have the sort of head swell up a little bit. And one way that we can do that is to take the footage and do some reverse stabilization on it. So essentially we'll have like an element that is stabilized but then unstabilized and applied back to the same shot, and it'll give us the opportunity to affect it like a balloon inflating. So the technique for that, or at least one of many techniques, would be to actually track Matt's face in order to stabilize the movement of his head. So I'll use our handy little tracker again here. Again, we just really love the speed of these kind of things. It's not so much that it's the most perfect solution, but it always gives us results that work quickly. What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to say that's great. Exactly. These trackers are very fast. We've had many screens and things we have done that have not worked with Mocha or other tracking softwares, and we've gone back to the 2-point track and just a power pin. So we're going to track in his face. Look at that.
Actually, I should probably be going the other direction because your head is going to swell.
Beforehand.
Yeah, exactly, up to the popping moment. So here's where we start. I think maybe I didn't reassign my track points there. There we go.
You're grabbing the corner of the eyes again for contrast, right?
Exactly. Just trying to find areas that have like reasonable amount of. There we go. Well,
And I know you'll ultimately make this perfect.
Oh yeah.
But let's go for the effects moving into this thing. Just give me kind of a sense of what you can do.
Sure, absolutely.
Nice.
Where did it jump off? Was there a weird cut there or something?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There you go. Huh.
We just have to get back to the first pump, which is here. So that seems like a reasonable
Yeah,
amount.
so that's a decent amount.
Okay.
We got enough there.
So what I'll do is I'll make sure that this is a stabilize, and I'll just go ahead and apply it to the footage. And then take that layer and pre-compose it, because we're going to do a reverse for the stabilization.
Online, a
Moving
lot
the
of people are asking whether we're using a Mac or a PC. Right here, we are using an iMac. This is the 5K version, I believe. And even at Saturday Night Live VFX, we use just iMacs.
I'm going to save the project really quickly because I always forget to do that.
That is a good call.
And we definitely don't want to have to undo or go back. So what I'll do is reveal the position, scale, anchor point, rotation here. And then I'll find my pre-composed stabilized shot and reveal its properties. And we just do this thing where we basically reverse the inputs. So we're taking the position data from the anchor point, taking the anchor point data from the position point. We're going to take the scale and parent, or rather grab the scale changes here, but we have to actually give it a little bit of a code. So what I'll do is put a little expression here. So I'll make this a variable and then give it a 1 divided by value 0, 1 divided by value 1, and then multiply that by 10,000. Little code.
Yeah.
It
All
doesn't
right,
make
so
sense to describe that too much, but
they're telling me we got a few more minutes. We got
Okay.
about 10 minutes left in the show, so I'm going
Great.
to put the pressure on you,
Sure,
just like
let's
it
do
does.
it.
So let's rock through and
Okay.
finish this bad boy.
yeah. All right, so I'm closing this, and now we should have.
So it's just like Showtime here. You got just, they've added a shot or changed the take. That also happens. Or they come and they change the take on you, and then you have to do it.
So yeah, now what I just need to do is isolate the head a little bit. So I'll just create one of our solids. This is a mask, or matte rather. I can actually probably rely on the fact that there's blue behind him to pull a key, but I'll just do a little quick garbage matte here.
Because most of the time you wouldn't have just a nice, beautiful blue background.
Exactly. There's so many ways that they can mess up the background.
Right.
But let's do a key light, perhaps. It's a reasonable keyer. Grab the blue.
And you just made a little garbage mat so that you can easily.
That's going to work just fine. Make sure that this is actually using the mat above. So this is what we're left with. Final result. Okay, so there's Matt's head, separated.
It's beautiful.
Stabilized. Should be okay as far as tracking on. Let's just take a quick look. Not sure what that weird little glitch is at the beginning there, but
It looks like we have like
We can
a
just
footage
kinda
glitch or something
start
in there.
here.
I think we have like a random frame, yeah.
yeah. All right, so now we have the ability to take something like the Liquify and apply that here. And this is a technique that I think a lot of us learned from Andrew Kramer of videocopilot.net back in the early, but there we go, we got a little head swell happening.
Uh-huh.
And then we want to just make sure that we keyframe that distortion percentage. We give like maybe half power to the first one. Maybe have this hold for a moment so that there's actual difference in motion between the first and the second pump. I like to give them a little bit of an ease. And we can take a look at that. Okay, so we have to retime this just slightly. It looks like the pump is a little later than our mark. There we go. Okay, so now we got the head inflating.
Yeah, I know I said earlier that you looked the best you've ever looked, Matt, but I don't think that you get much better looking than that right there. That's a beautiful moment.
Oh no, okay. So now let's just get some stock footage in here because we want some blood or something cool to happen when the head explodes. Blood. Let's grab one of these guys. Stock footage is really a lovely thing to have at your disposal when you're working fast. I'm gonna rotate this.
Many times when we've had to be very fast, we've used the same shot many times of stock footage, and we just rotate, scale, adjust, retime, and it makes a small effect that out of the box looks really hard to use feel much more full. That's nice and gross.
Oh yeah. And we can definitely finesse the color and stuff maybe after we send the director, you know, a first pass or something like that.
Make sure he likes the direction.
It's all about how much time you've got and whether or not you can get it done.
So
right?
again, we're going to be a little tight on time here, so we want to hustle through this
all
here.
Right, so let's just take a look at that.
The color correction.
I'm going to just crop this in. It's a little early. Oh, also, sorry, we got to make sure the head actually disappears. There we go. Okay, so we're getting there. Maybe we could add some like smoke or something. You just let me know at what point we gotta stop.
You just let's add a little bit of smoke. Let's put a little bit of shake in, right?
Camera shake is wonderful. This would be like after the explosion. Maybe there's like a little bit of mist rising from Mr. Yonks's neck stump.
And I know that you're very minutes away from being able to finish, so that's what I just want to get here. I want to leave a little bit of time while you finish up here.
Okay.
We might even go ahead and take a few questions if anybody has any other questions from the live audience or online. If anybody have any questions in the audience? Everybody's good? It's a very good, everybody's a very vocal bunch here.
That's way too fast. This is supposed to rise up. All right, so yeah, a little camera shake would be great. It looks very Muppets right now to me, but
it's very
we could
Muppets,
improve on that.
There's a world in which something like that.
So maybe we take everything and just call this like comped. And then, you know, to add some drama to the explosion, we can just kind of give this some position keyframe changes, maybe like a scale change, rotation, just little bits to kind of like help sell the energy of the pop. Nope, not that much. Something like that. And what I'll do is use our handy motion tile effect, which
How
will
do you feel, Yonks? How do you think it's turning out for you?
It's great.
Looking good? Feeling good? Clock's ticking, yeah. This is normally how this happens whenever Milton's standing here and he's pacing in and out of the room, running in, and then he comes up and he'll stand right here. Be like, how's it coming?
I'm fine.
How's it coming?
Yeah.
Just put some motion blur on it and export it. It's good. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. We could just add a little motion blur here.
There you go. Every
He's
once
always
in a
got
while,
great
Matt
advice.
Young, post supervisor gets something in there, man. Add a little motion blur. So
All right.
we need to color correct. There's some layer orders here with with some things you got in there, but I'm feeling you can see kind of the ending of where we're going here.
We could do a lumetri just to kind of get an idea of what maybe might happen when they start running correction on the footage. A lot of times what you want to do as well is try to anticipate how the grade would affect the composite, so you might want to put like a guide layer over top with a LUT.
Right.
That way you can render it out in the flat color space, but then be able to see what it might happen when you pull the
But
contrast
you're all
up.
set for color because you already did your color key on that blue. You pre-comped it and used the alpha channel of it.
Right.
So you're pretty set.
Yeah.
So Milton is very, very cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Put that. Oh, you're saying
Okay, so we got time. We have a little bit of time.
down below the next stump, like that. I mean, we could also bring in some other. Just layer it up a little bit.
Yeah, so you're on your finishing touches here.
Yeah.
So you got to take a couple more minutes and just see if you can put a little polish on this.
We could
bad
also
boy.
like add. Oops, that's not a. I was thinking we could add some splatter to the background or something, maybe.
Yeah, put some splatter on the background. I love
Okay.
the idea. His head's exploding and like, you know, just like all over the place. Hits him on the wall maybe.
Maybe way back
I'm a
in the
director,
background.
yeah, I'm very in. This is a zombie movie. Obviously, the man in the head with the bicycle pump rampage.
Parent that to the background, which was, I think, one. Yeah.
This is very cool to be able to see, man. Like, be able to watch.
It's funny
Yeah, I
because
can't
some
wait
of
to
the
see how it
decisions
actually
you
turns
make.
out. I feel like this is something that's going to go right on my Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Getting that IG.
Splat. Somewhere back there.
Yeah, and then we obviously add sound effects to this. Looks like you might have a little bit of a ear floating in there.
Feels a little too far away for that to be realistic, but blur it a little bit.
When in doubt, blur it out.
Exactly.
That's adding a little bit of depth.
It's a little far for a blood.
A little fall for a blood spurt. And we got a little timing issue on it too.
Yeah.
But we're doing pretty well here, man. Milton, I feel like I get the sense of where we go and where we finish this bad boy up, and I think it's looking pretty good as is.
Cool.
But you
All
can
right.
get a pretty good sense of it. So thanks again for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me.
Always a great time hanging out.
It was really nice to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Milton Ladd, for being our guest today. And of course, I want to congratulate my co-host, Steve. Now you see why we don't usually let the public see him. Anyways, we're going to be back here at 4 p.m. Pacific with an amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her. She is a director of photography and the co-founder of Seed and Spark. Eve Cohen will be with us right here. She's going to be explaining how to develop crowdfunding campaigns and what to do when you're just trying to figure out how to get a little money for your independent project. So come right back. We'll be on Facebook Live, YouTube, and right here live from the floor of NAB. Tune in to Adorama Live at 4 p.m. Pacific with Eve Cohen. We'll see you right back there then.